Hello and welcome to my talk. I'm Nataliya Nadtoka, and today I'd like to talk to you about conflict resolution, just survival skills that you'll need for managing very large scale projects.
But before I begin with that, let me say a couple of words of what brings me today
to data technology and overall to technology. I have started my path in Ukraine. I'm originally from Kharkiv. I did applied mathematics undergrad studies in Ukraine, and after I did that, I was really fortunate to have opportunity to study and live in Germany and United Kingdom. That was just wonderful for my experience and growth as a human being, and just to open my horizons a little more and learn about different cultures. After I complete my PhD in 3D animation using data, a little bit similar to generative AI and ChatGPT and techniques like that, today I was working as data scientist at a startup in Silicon Valley. And that time, that 1 year of data science, I think I did data science for about a month in that time. The rest of the time, I probably spent doing data engineering. That experience of data engineering and also some events that I organized and hosted in our Silicon Valley community for data engineering topics and data science, data mining, brought me closer to my job at Centro, and later it was renamed to Basic Technologies, as a data engineer. There, I really learned how to be doing proper data engineering. That was really invaluable experience. I did this for a few years before moving on to human management. During my data engineering time, I worked on one very large project, and that will be the example I'll use today, just to talk about how important the human factors are in technology. The company has slowly outgrown the setup that we were in, and we were ready for a change and move from more rigid data center based Hadoop and MySQL to more flexible, more scalable Snowflake in the cloud. We started this multi-year initiative with many unknowns.
What do you do when you start with such a large project? How do you even begin? Before you begin with this particular technical change, you might want to treat it as a change management project and align everyone around the vision.
I would typically suggest to start with a small scale POC that permits you to really know what is this new technology you're planning to move on to. And this will permit you to better scope the changes needed to execute the same. It will permit you to work through all the stages of project management cycle.
You will then use this information that you have learned to identify the risks that you might encounter, do some dependency mapping, knowing that your initial implementation plan is already there, figure out what are the milestones for these deliveries and properly time them, just with an estimate initially, and then tighten this estimate as you go towards the objectives that you have set. Of course, you need to keep in mind that there will be unknowns and you'll need to learn and adapt along the way. Communication is the key. It will make or break such project. So you'll need some touch points with different teams involved in this initiative. In our case, there was pretty much all tech teams were impacted by this change. We had touch points with them. We communicated our progress. We aligned our deliverables and made sure the integration points were clear and that everyone across the organization had what they needed to move in parallel towards the shared objective. We had to do joint deployments to make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction and nothing breaks in production. Quality testing was also the key here. To succeed data engineering projects, you need to pay attention to quality. You don't want to move to a new solution if it offers mediocre data quality. One of the dangers of such projects is that you might run over the expected budget, causing budget blowouts. You might experience unplanned pivot. changing the direction completely. That will require rework and extra time and resources. There can be also scope creep, meaning that you might embark on this technology migration with certain scope of work, but then along the way, either you or different stakeholders might advocate for added increased scope. And then there can be also some unknowns causing the delays and pushing the project timeline.
As an example of scope creep, we took on extra work to permit parallel iteration and agile development across multiple teams, including data engineering team, across data engineers working on parallel features, parallel in time, and across different teams who were also now dependent on our data sets and also needed some way to provision the environments using this data and work in them. That was a great opportunity to solve this problem. This big migration and change project was excellent for the same as we were rebuilding completely the whole stack that we used to provision our environments, to do environment management and all the automation for build and deploy, called CI/CD sometimes. Another example of where time can go typically are pivots and changes of direction. In our case, one notable change of direction was when we switched over to use Snowpark in the middle of the project for ongoing future work. That one didn't cost so much in terms of extra time add, but such changes, dramatic changes in implementation plan can cause extra resources taken to rework the previous implementation. If that would be the case, in our case, it didn't happen. These decisions to take on the extra scope or to pivot or not to pivot are not easy black and white kind of decisions. They require some thought and consideration of all options.
It's more of a balancing act than a perfect science. You need to consider all the trade-offs and all the advantages that you'll get from this extra added scope or change of implementation. I'd like to begin by sharing the quote from Dale Carnegie. When dealing with people, remember, you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion.
Of course, such big-scale change management projects can create conflict just due to such a large scale of change, due to also other reasons. Before I deep dive, I wanted to share one unpopular opinion. I think that conflicts and stress can also be used for good. So they come with this power, this energy that you can harness and employ in a good way when used responsibly. You can think about it as an example of a student rushing to commit his coursework by a certain deadline in the last few hours and completing it on time due to the stress. The extra added stress helps to complete certain work by the deadline. So another aspect of the same is that you can improve outcomes by bringing more ideas, and sometimes they can cause conflicting feelings across the team, but different ideas can lead to more comprehensive solution and better outcomes. And then, strangely enough, if you really work through the conflicts, if you spend the time to admit that we are all humans and work through them to better understand the other party, it can improve communication. It can bring the team closer together and make them work as a more coherent unit, as a single group working towards the same objective. So this said, in small quantities, this stress, post-stress, and conflicts can be positive or can lead to positive outcomes, but when they are left unattended for long periods of time, extended periods of stress, or conflict that hasn't been properly managed and resolved, can escalate and can cause negative impact both on physical and mental health. And of course, it has a direct correlation with outcomes of project deliverables in this case. Why do conflicts really happen?
Conflicts are a part of our environment. They are part of us being human, and so is stress.
In reality, the bigger kind of conflict can arise because you might have different priorities. You can compete for resources. For example, half of the team, if you think of it, can work on some already committed product features that require very fast delivery and turnaround time and still need to happen at the same time as another half of the team may work on the new implementation using new stack. So the one that works on the older stack may want to complete that implementation using existing technology because it's more predictable. It causes a quicker iteration. But then the newer stack people, the half of the team that works on the new implementation stack, may be worried and concerned about the added tech debt and the need to address this later on. Apart from that, if you think of technical projects, there are multiple ways to achieve the same targets. There can be multiple paths between A and B. And so sometimes technical leaders on the team can have very varied opinions and can clash over this. But if this worked out, it's not a matter of concern. It can lead to better outcomes. Then in our virtual world, communication is increasingly harder compared to before. When you need to convey your message, sometimes people resort to using Slack or emails, and these techniques of communication may deserve their place, but may not necessarily convey the response of the other party. You may not have the correct feedback mechanism to properly understand what they took away as a message from what you have communicated. So this can lead to communication breakdowns, lack of clear expectations. Also, some other reasons of conflict are typically just the fact that we are human and we have our own personalities and varied working styles. So all of this may lead to conflicts. So what can we do about it? Some tips for conflict management is to establish clear separation of responsibilities, especially in such a very large project. It's very important to be upfront and clear about decision-making rights that will be used for this project, who will decide on what, and what is the process that will be used. Keeping focus on shared vision, shared goals, making sure that this is clear to everyone on the team is very important. It's crucial for success of such projects and may help to resolve the conflict because people will be aligned against common goals. Of course, being clear of decision-making process and being open about it, it's really useful here as well. Being flexible and adaptable and being vulnerable to be wrong, to accept that you are wrong sometimes and you don't know everything. It's very crucial. Encouraging the open dialogue and really listening to the other party and their message, deploying active listening techniques is very crucial. Finally, with all these messages about how important human factors are, I'd like to conclude my talk by giving a couple of words of advice to future leaders or current leaders who may be in similar situations as I was before in the beginning of this multi-year initiative. Human factors are important. While you might be really focusing on the technical aspects of this unpredictable tech stack, you cannot neglect human factors. You need to work through your team, make sure that they're aligned, that they get enough time to process this change, and you employ empathy both with your team, for example, as a leader of the team, but also with people around you, perhaps your manager or manager of your manager, across organization as well, because they're all impacted by this change, potentially. And of course, active listening. I'll repeat it one more time. It's very useful.
Another aspect as a leader you might be under lots of pressure to deliver. You might experience different stress factors during this project. So to be the best of yourself and to bring your best in such projects, you need to double down on self-care, whatever helps you recharge, whatever helps you rest, whatever permits you to be your best self at work. Do that first, because this will permit you to be a better leader. Your support system will be tested in this situation. Your support system at work, your support system at home.
We are all human beings, and we need support, and just being frank about it and accepting that it takes a village to be successful, to do well on these big milestones, initiatives.
This support system may be your friends, your relatives, it can be colleagues, it can be some people from different departments, not necessarily in your department at work. But just having them and asking for help when needed, it's really important. And finally, put down your superhero cape. You are not there to solve the problems. As a leader, you are there to let your team struggle and create this safe environment for failure, encouraging calculated risks. Finally, do not rush to share your ideas. As a leader, you might have lots of ideas. I know I have a lot, because coming from a PhD years, this is what excites me, is the ideation aspect of a technical job. But it is important to remember power differential if you're a leader, and your ideas may be taken immediately as an instruction for action rather than for what they are. So stand back, listen, ask questions, and let your team come up with their own solutions, because they're closer to the details and may be better equipped for a solution to this particular problem. And your solution, no matter how good it sounds in your head, may be much worse, much more inferior than what they can come up with.
And finally, the last but not the least, this kind of long-running initiatives may cause you to burn out if you are rushing through it as a sprint. So pace yourself, take some breaks. Even though it seems very much time critical, everything within this initiative seems time critical, integrate some small periods of rest within this activity so you can recharge and perform quicker next time, be more effective. And that's all. I think that's all I wanted to share. Really appreciate your invitation here. Thank you so much. Bye.